What it is, y'all, it is your old boy Pilk, and I'm coming back at you today with more Danmachi, and today we're going to talk about re-rolling in the game under the current circumstances. Now, honestly, this is not a comprehensive list of every unit that's going to be useful. What I've done is I've gotten a list together of all the units that I feel like are worth their weight right now and will be in the future. So when we're looking at this right now, this isn't just the only list available. These are just the top 14 units that I feel like really could hold their weight now and later on down the line in the game. And you'll notice we do have some C and D tier units that we'll get to them and explain why they do their thing here in a moment. But I'm going to start, funny enough, with B tier and with this Haruhime unit right here. Now, normally, this Haruhime unit would be our, like, the one. We'd be like, go after her. She's crazy. She's good. She does everything. This unit you absolutely need. But hear me out. She's now free to play. When you get to level 40 in the Bell story, they will drop one on you immediately. So while if you're rerolling, you pull her, bam. I would almost say keep her because she's going to get you where you need to go. Your initial units that you get in the game and your 3 stars and things like that that you accumulate along the way, they will work well under her and she'll keep them going. They're not going to get you to level 40, but she's going to be a great start. Now, let me also add that we are going to get a big update to the general pool in the game. In other words, all the units we have right now, we're going to get a few more units here shortly. They'll add to this, so this list will be actually kind of irrelevant in about 2 weeks' time. But these units will get you from here basically to the anniversary and just fine. So once you get to the Bell level 40, once you start grinding out and you start getting some 4-star tickets, some 3-star tickets and all that stuff, hold on to those until the general pool update occurs. We'll actually talk about that when it happens. There will be a big video on the channel about that. But for now, I would say get whatever units you get rerolled, get a couple 2-star, 3 stars, maybe a 4-star or 2, and then just hold and wait until that update. And after that, we can go nuts. Now, that said, this Haruhime unit is spectacular. She has a 40% debuff. That is wonderful. She also does a debuff and a buff replication on your basically debuff replication on your opponents and buff replication on all your adventurers. She is super useful. And the best thing about her is with her special attack, she actually will do 100% strength and magic buff with a big heal. She also heals on counters. She is the best unit in the game, period. The biggest reason that she's in B class, and the only reason she's in B class, is because you will eventually get her for free. Number 1. Number 2, and this is really important to take note, she is not going to be able to get you to level 40 on her own. In fact, you probably will not need her too much until you get her to that point. Now, when I talk about level 40 in the Bell story event, basically all the normal modes currently are 0 stamina. I think that's actually permanent. Could be wrong in that, but I believe for now we have 0 stamina cost on all initial runs, so you could just get a couple of units that are really phenomenal and probably go along your way. Also, remember, you can use support units, friend people in the game, join the Discords, the Stardust Garden, and my personal Discord, the Cruise Suspension Bridge to Venezuela. You can meet people there, you can friend people there, and you can use support units. I have videos on how all that works in the 101 section along with this, so make sure you check out all the 101s along with, this guide here. But not to waste too much time, as good as she is, and as much as you can use bonds of her, like basically when you get multiples of these units, they do compound and they do basically add on to the stats of the unit. I really feel like since she's free, she's not probably your stopgap at this point. You may want to go a little further. And probably, as we'll get up here, and we'll talk about now, the S tier units that I think really are kind of the best of the best for everything going on currently. And I'll start with this Welf right here. This Welf actually has a skill that is extremely useful, and you'll see actually 3 times over on this list, and that is he does buff and debuff replication. Or I'm sorry, not buff and debuff. I'm sorry, he does 33% SA gauge charge. Ha! No, he's not Haruhime. He does 33% SA gauge charge, and what that basically means is for every time your units hit, they're actually, even do an attack in general, they're actually going to increase the little gauge at the top, which will allow you to do a special attack. What he does is he says, okay, every hit will add another 33% onto that. If all 4 units on your team get that 33% charge, that's literally like 5 1/3 units doing attacks to raise that SA gauge. Basically, that means your special attacks will happen much, much, much sooner. On top of that, he does a big buff for fire units on that skill. So one of the biggest things you can do when you're building a team out here in the beginning, focus on one element. Focus on one element specifically and build that element out. While you're not going to get very far in the long run of the game with just one beastly team, early game, you can get through quite a few events with one really phenomenal team. So I really feel like the Fire team and Light team are like the 2 best teams in the game. Light actually may eke out Fire quite a bit more. That said, let's talk about another Fire unit, and that is Lead here, the Lizard. And yes, he is a lizard. If you haven't watched the anime, go watch the anime. It makes a lot of sense. So Lead is really awesome. He's a phenomenal hitter. He actually gets duplicate attacks, which means he has a buff that will give him multiple attacks, and he's got a big self buff. He's got, I believe, a 60% self buff on both his strength and his fire. It is wild. And he will do a ton of damage. Remember, he gets double attacks. I'm not going to go into too much of the statistics of how he works, because that'll drag this video out way long. The version I did of that was well over an hour. So I'm just going to give you the basics. That unit will be phenomenal. If you wind up with both those units somehow, you're going to have a stellar team, especially when you get Haruhime finally on that team. Lead is a great attacker. He's an AoE unit. In other words, in fact, every unit on here, with one exception, is AoE, meaning area of effect. They attack all units on the field simultaneously, and they're going to be wonderful for that. Welf is an AoE, but he also is more of a support. There are a couple supports here, but every support on this team actually does have an AoE effect to it. He's really spectacular. I love this unit a lot. The other unit in S tier is the Light Bell. Now, this Bell is starting to show his age ever so slightly, but he's really good still. Now, he's not Fire Element, he is Light Element. Remember, I said Light Element is exceptional, and you'll see why I say that here in just a minute. Now, Light Bell doesn't actually buff himself. He does kind of need buffs externally, but he still hits really hard and is AoE without all those buffs, and he's got enough debuffs that it really kind of makes up the difference. He's part of a rush team that a lot of people build for Wargame right now, Wargame being the big PvP event, and he will hold his own, not just through the story events, but also into PvP, and the more bonds you get for him, the more times you upgrade this unit, the better he gets. He's wonderful. He's fantastic. If you get any one of those 3 units, though, keep them. They're going to get you right up to level 40, get you that Haruhime we talked about earlier, and this is going to be a winning recipe. Now, just because Haruhime, this unit here that we talked about, Foxy Princess Haruhime, just because she is AoE, or I'm sorry, just because she's a support and a fire unit doesn't mean she can't work with other teams. She actually works with just about every team out there right now. She is wonderful. She's fantastic. Foxy Princess Haruhime is, without a doubt, necessary. But as I said, the goal here is to get up to level 40 and to get those units built out. So that is that. Now, another fire unit I do want to talk about is this particular bell right here. Determination Bell is a wonderful unit in all realms of the game. Determination Bell will get you very far. He's an AoE. In fact, he doesn't even have a single target skill. You'll find that a lot of AoE units have multiple skills that do both AoE and single target. He's a pure AoE. The only reason he's A tier and not S tier is because, once again, a lot like the Light Bell, he does require external buffs. He doesn't really buff himself. And I don't feel like he has the same effect as Light Bell with all of the debuffs. Light Bell still has some really phenomenal debuffs that get you very, very far. Determination Bell is literally like just one rung below him. Now, Determination Bell is a wonderfully fantastic unit. I really do enjoy him. But I've got to be honest here. If there's one unit that reigns above all units here in A tier, it is the Light Haruhime. Light Haruhime is a just all-around fantastic unit. Now, Light Haruhime is, let me see, her name was, I'm trying to remember what they actually called her in the game. Ocean Virtue Haruhime. Now, Ocean Virtue Haruhime is really, really, really good, but she is the only single target unit that I've actually recommended on this team because of what she does for the team. One, she's got really good heals. Two, she's got a really phenomenal buff for light units, but like with the OG Haruhime, the Foxy Princess Haruhime that we've talked so much about, she does strength and magic buffs on her special attack. This Haruhime does 80% light damage on her special attack. Now, most self buffs you're going to find are going to be between like 50 and 70%, depending upon the unit. If you can imagine, once you get both of the Haruhimes on a singular team, 100% strength magic plus 80% light turns that light team into killers. They're crazy and they're wild. And I already said the bell that we talked about, the Fiesta Bell up here. Fiesta Bell is fantastic, but imagine him, and he's fantastic on his own without buffs. Imagine him with those buffs, he becomes deadly. Absolutely deadly. So if you manage to pull Ocean Virtue Haruhime, she is really, really phenomenal. Really phenomenal. Now, I will talk again about a support unit. I'm going to bring her over here. Line, both the Lines on this team. Now, one is in A tier, one is actually in D tier. And the reason being, they both do roughly the same thing. Now, both A tier and D tier both have 33% SA gauge charge. Remember, we talked about that with the Wealth unit up here. Now, that Wealth unit, and I don't remember his name either. I'm messing up here, but what do they call him? Let's see. He's on my team somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That Wealth unit, he's the most recent Wealth. I had to pull him up over here. I am absolutely drawing a blank, and it is so stupid. His name is Determination Wealth. Thank you, Brain. I even said that earlier. Determination Wealth does 33% SA gauge charge and big buffs for the team. Now, the Idol Line, and that's her name, Idol Line, does 33% SA gauge charge, but she also does a critical and penetration rate buff for the whole team. So in other words, you're going to be doing so much more damage. Actually, I think it's counter and penetration rate buff. If I recollect, let me get that absolutely correct so I don't get yelled at in the comments section. I'm just going to pull her up over here real quick as well. Light team, Line. There she is. All right. So Idol Line on her second skill does 33% SA gauge charge, critical rate, and penetration rate. So, yeah, like I said before, critical and penetration rate, which is just going to make everybody hit harder. Her first skill is also an AoE skill, but she doesn't have any buffs. So while it's not going to be a good hit, it's still going to be okay enough to probably get you to like level 20 or so. She's going to go along. Now, if you're using a support unit, if you're using one of your friend's units on your fourth slot, then she's going to really come into her own. Then she's really going to be worthwhile. That said, we also have this lower tier Line here. Now, she does roughly the same thing without the critical and penetration rate. She literally just does 33% SA gauge charge. She's got a couple of attacks. They're kind of puny. If you are just summoning and you're just getting frustrated and you're tired and you happen to pull this unit, definitely make sure you've got some good supporters, get some good friends you can use as support units in the game, and she'll get you along. She's not the best, but she is a unit you're going to wind up using a lot, basically until you either pull Wealth or this other Line. She's a holdover unit. She's very old. She shows her age, but getting those special attacks off is going to be really, really, really important. So I really feel like she is a good holdover for either one of those first two units. That said, this older Line really... Faithful Line is what they call her. She's aged, and she definitely shows her age. Another unit that I will definitely say shows her age, but is worthwhile to an extent, is the Gallant Armor Eyes right here. Now, Gallant Armor Eyes has some great stats going for her, but she doesn't really do the craziest amount of damage. The reason she's here on this team whatsoever is because she has one of the best AoE buffs in the game. She will buff AoE damage, or technically debuff the opponent's resistance to AoE damage like crazy. You will find that even if you pull her now, you can use her for quite a bit of time. You'll wind up at the point where you just use her for one turn and then like sacrifice her. But to be honest, she will hold her own for quite a bit of time. I believe it's a 30% AoE debuff. I believe that's what it is. And it's really, really, really phenomenal. It's basically going to let all your AoE, all your attack, all units do everything crazy. She is again on the light team, showing you how good the light team really is. But if I'm honest, she's C tier because you're only going to use her as an attacker for the first, maybe couple weeks of the game. After that, you're going to just use her as a sacrifice, and that's that. But she's going to be a good sacrifice for a long time. So C and D tier, that's the only reason that they're here. They're good supports. They wind up being good sacrifices, but that's kind of about it. Beyond that, they really start to show their age, and their usefulness really starts to peter off. Now, I just wanted to touch on those units. Let's get back to A tier, and let's actually talk about, I'm going to talk about Lilune first. Lilune is an interesting unit. Now, she's the only unit on this entire team that is an Earth unit. She's the only Earth unit that I can really recommend at this juncture. Now, there are other Earth units, yes. Most of them wind up being single targets, the ones that I would recommend, the ones you can get right now. There also is a Winnie unit that is in here, but she's such a support. I really don't think that she would be worth... I don't think she has enough attacks. This Lilune unit has some really good attacks. She's got a big magic agility and earth attack damage buff on her SA. She gives herself magic and earth attack damage 60% with her skill 2, and she does extra attacks. So she's really good. She's going to hit hard. She's going to get you far enough in the game that you'll once again be able to get your Haruhime and really start to shine. If there is kind of one going pattern you'll notice here, it's getting to that turn 40. Or getting that event 40 in the story. She's really, really good at that. Another unit that's very, very, very similar in build is this Tiona. Tione. Tione is a thunder unit and along the lines the same vein as Lilune. Very good unit, 60% buffs, fantastic unit. You'll use her a lot. She's fantastic, and she really is kind of like the best AoE unit currently on the Thunder team that isn't time limited. In fact, I think she's currently the best AoE unit on the Thunder team at all, if I recollect. She's got a sister. She works really well with her sister, but the sister is more of a support. So I really feel like if you're going for one solid unit during rerolls, the Tione here, the Thunder Tione, would be a great unit to pull. And she's not the... Lilune, thankfully, is the only Lilune in the game currently. Tione is called Marine Snake Tione, or Marine Snack Tione, if you ask me. Fantastic unit, and definitely worth your time. If you pull Marine Snake Tione, you are going to have a good unit that's going to get you quite a ways in the game. That is, and if you'll notice here, first unit is fire, the first bell unit we talked about. The second two units were light. Now we got to earth, thunder, and I'm finally going to get to a dark element unit. Dark element doesn't get a lot of love, unfortunately. But that said, Argana, and she's the only Argana in the game. If you pull Argana, you're in luck. She's a great unit all around. Now, I do know a lot of people prefer Bachi over Argana, but the reason I'm going to recommend this unit is because she is going to have a self-buff. That's 60% self-buff, just like Lilune, just like Tione, and she's going to produce enough damage that she is going to get you all the way to level 40 without question. She will probably last you quite a bit of time. She's fantastic. The only downside to her is that the Dark team just doesn't get enough love in the game. I really feel like the Dark team has kind of petered off. And if there's any indication of that, it will be, let's move down here to B tier, this Ottarl unit. Rage Ottarl used to be top tier. About this, he dropped a little less than a year ago. About like what, April or May, I believe, of last year. And he was OP for so long. The reason he's B tier over A tier, and the only reason is because he gets a 50% buff on his skills. Though he does get a big defensive buff, he's good both single target and AoE almost on equal footing. He only gets that 50% buff. Argana hits a bit harder, and Argana gets extra attacks. So in other words, she does the double attacks every turn, whereas Ottarl is single attack and 50%. Now he gets a 60% buff on his SA, but at this stage of the game, SAs really should be doing closer to like 80%, 90% damage. He doesn't do that. And there's nobody in the game that really does give Dark that buff yet. I emphasize yet. I feel like it's coming. But I will talk about that on another video. So Ottarl, a good unit, probably not going to last as long as the E tier units, but I do feel like he deserves some attention. If you pull him, great unit. Now, I do want to emphasize, I know there's a lot of units that I'm overlooking. I did have to break this team down, and I needed to put minimal supports on here. I needed to get mostly adventurers. There are no assists on this build. The reason that I didn't do assists is because you want to focus on building an element team first and foremost. Once you get a good element team built, well, then you can work on what assists you need for that team. Assists will come with time. Assists are worth more than adventures, but I really feel like for your first reroll, you should probably get a good AoE adventurer, or in the case of Haruhime, support that's just so incredibly worthwhile, and then go from there. Now, I'm going to go and deviate from that with another light unit, and that is the new Fells we just got in this game. Forbidden Fells is a really good support unit, and one of her best skills, and that is, or I say hers, his, he, she, Fells really doesn't have a gender, so to speak. Literally, if you know the franchise, Fells literally forgot what they were. But Fells' first skill is a big all-element defensive buff with a 35% HP regen. Now, Fells' second skill, and I got to read it here because I don't remember all these skills up for Fells right off the top of my head, is another heal on top of the HP regen. So remember, heals go first, and then HP regens happen at the end of the turn, so it's really awesome. With a strength and magic buff for all allies, and the final skill is an AoE super level. So it goes like low, mid, high, and then super, and then ultra for some of the SAs. Super is the highest you can get on a skill at the moment. Super light magic attack with temporary magic boost, penetration rate, and all allies ailment cure. That means like poisons, stuns, sleeps, all that stuff that this unit will cure. She's not he, she, it. Will not hit crazy. Fells will not be a wild and crazy hitting unit, but Fells is a good enough support that I think definitely if you pull Fells, it might be worth saving for, but you would need some really good adventurers to go along with Fells. That said, you like I said before, make some friends in the game, get some supports. You will be very happy. The one thing that Fells does that makes Fells super important for the late game especially, Fells has a 50% basically death saving throw. If your units die for any reason whatsoever, they'll be resurrected. Now, it's a 50% chance. So when that SA goes off, everybody on the team, literally it's like 50-50. It's almost like they flip a coin. Heads, they get resurrection. Tails, they just croak. So an awesome, almost broken skill in the game. Fells is fantastic, but I really feel like for your early game, Fells probably shouldn't be a focus. Fells will be around, and we're going to get all these units are going to be on paid banners and even some of the support banners coming up towards the anniversary. So if you don't get all these units, you're fine. You are going to be able to build this team out graciously. Now, the one thing I do want to emphasize, when you're looking at elements, consider elements first and foremost. If you pull like Belle or this light Haruhime or even these two, then you probably want to really focus on building out a light team. Light is going to help you out drastically. Now, if you pull either one of these three, he doesn't belong up there. What is he doing up there? Back down there. Back where you belong. Then build a fire team net. That really will help you out. Now, the only exception to that is this Haruhime. You can build any team with her. It doesn't really matter what she's on. Even though she is fire element, it really doesn't affect anything too terribly. The downside of picking one of these three is that they're really about the only top tier units on their team as far as, and I will emphasize, I know there's some single target units, I know there's some supports and all that stuff. I'm literally talking about grinding the story events, getting you to some PvP events, getting you to 7th zone and things like that, getting into the game. Like, these are literally the units that are going to be your first stepping stones into the game. So that's going to be my recommendation. Now, I know a lot of people are going to differentiate. It's definitely worth having the conversation in the comment section. So if you feel like I missed a unit, if you feel like I misrepresented a unit, if you feel like somebody deserved more love or deserved more attention, definitely let me know in the comment section. These can be very... people have a lot of opinions on this game, but definitely keep it civil, guys. This is just an opinion piece on my part. A lot of people ask me, and this is my honest to goodness answer. Get a good AoE or just a support that's out of this world that will last forever, and then go get your Foxy Princess Haruhime from Bell Story 40. For now, guys, that's going to be my video. Let me know what you guys thought. Definitely in the comments section. Hit that old thumbs up if you found this at least entertaining, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Don't forget, tonight is the return of the live streams. I'll be back at you guys tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time with the Danmachi live stream.